longing for rejection, longing for being dismissed, longing for men who ignore you, neglect you, and don't care that you exist, don't care what you need, and longing for that. That is a trauma bond. Now, the videos I've seen online on YouTube as I've Googled trauma bonds are, the majority are made by women or men who were in abusive relationships, narcissistic relationships, and they kept going back to their abuser. And that is one type of trauma bond. That is one type of love dependency. Longing for your abuser. That's real. You want to know why women go back to those men? It's a trauma bond. It's this deep emotional attachment wound. Give me more, give me more. I need you so much. I feel like I'm going to die without you. I know you're hurting me, but I'm going to die without you. Okay, that requires inner healing. It's not on the level of logic, because the logic is turned off when your limbic system is activated. When this part of your brain is activated, the limbic system, the emotional center, your prefrontal cortex goes dormant. It's like when you get triggered. And all of you, everybody gets triggered. So don't say you don't, you do. Just think about when you get triggered, when you get pissed off and you're like, well, fuck you, I don't need you anyway. Or you're such a piece of, you know, or you want to withdraw. Who needs you? Or you want to make someone wrong. You just get angry, annoyed, triggered. Well, for people who have, when you get triggered, you can probably calm yourself down in a few minutes, maybe in an hour or two. But there are degrees of being triggered. There's some people who actually get so dysregulated from a trigger because they had childhood PTSD that it can take them several days to come down. It's called being dysregulated rather than just being reactive. So when people are trauma bonded, it's just that much, much deeper trigger reactivity that's constant, and they don't even know what's happening, why it's happening, and how to heal it. All they know is, I am going to do whatever I need to do to get this person to love me. I will annihilate parts of myself. I will let myself be abused. I will crawl at your feet. And I'm just kind of like, this has never happened to me. But I know the feeling because I've had it, not from men who've abused me. I will say no man has ever abused me. Unless you want to call neglect abuse, which it is. I would say the only man who's ever abused me through neglect, covert neglect, was my father. And even though he really loved me, and I was his favorite child, I think he spanked me once, he was neglectful. And people who were emotionally neglected don't know that they were abused. Neglect is a form of abuse, you guys. And that's what I want to make this trauma bond video about, because we have to stop talking about abuse as something that happened and start talking about abuse as something that didn't happen. It's called covert abuse, covert neglect, what you didn't get as a child. And that is, you're supposed to get connection, guidance, love. If you ask someone about their childhood, and I've coached people like this, and someone comes to me and is like, I had a great childhood. It was perfect. My parents never fought. My parents loved me. It was great. And you ask them, yes, I had enough food, you know, I had a good place to live, I had clothes, we went to school, we went to church, we took family trips. And then ask them, when you were a child and you needed comfort, who did you go to for comfort? And if you said, I didn't go to my parents, there's your answer. Because I can guarantee you that there was a time you went to your parents, you didn't like the answer they gave you, and you decided you were never going to do that again. And you may not even remember when that was. It could have even been when you were a baby. That's abuse, what you didn't get. And so if that happened to you, I just want to say that I believe you, and I'm really sorry that you were neglected and yet your needs were not met. Now, this isn't to make your parents wrong. They did the best they could. They were asleep, just like you're asleep. I'm waking people up as I'm waking up. So now we just want to, you can grieve that, right? You can grieve that, yet also know that there's an impact. So once you decide as a child, I'm not going to anyone for comfort, I'm going to take care of myself. Now that's an adaptive stance that helped you as a child, but as an adult, it is keeping you disconnected from yourself, disconnected from life, and choked up. Choked up. I don't need anyone. I can take care of myself. People are just going to hurt me. People don't care about my needs, so I'm not even going to have needs. And I'm making this video in real time as I'm working through this stuff myself rather than after the fact, because I just want to make a video about it. So, and that was me as a child, that I solved my own problems because my parents were very busy, okay? And I always said my parents loved me, and yes, they did. And they didn't give me the emotional nurturing that I needed. So I decided as a child, I would just take care of myself. And I did. As an example, I was the best student in the class. So like all the kids looked up to me. Everyone thought I was so smart. And so I was never bullied. However, there was a boy that hit me sometimes on the way to school. My friend and I would walk to school and he hit us. And I was like, I didn't even tell my mom because I knew she wouldn't do anything about it. So I decided that I was going to take this boy on. And I wrote a letter. I told my friend, we're going to write a letter and tell his mom. And I took the letter to his mom. We walked all the way to the boy's house and knocked on the door and gave the letter to his mom. And she read it, and the boy never touched me again. I did some now the problem with not knowing what we didn't get is that we don't know what we didn't get. I didn't know that men were supposed to care about my needs. I knew that I didn't want a guy who was this or that. So I married a guy who was not like my dad. I think my dad has too many flaws for me to enjoy his company, in that he's a little bit reactive and controlling and unable to care about the needs of other people. So my ex-husband didn't do that. I would say, though, that after I left my ex-husband, my motto was, I will never, ever again be with a man who doesn't care about my needs, because I cared about my ex-husband's needs and how he felt and what he wanted. And I was so aware of my needs never being met. And anyone watching this video, I know sometimes guys are like, yeah, you should not have left your ex-husband. I will tell you what my ex-husband said to me a year after our divorce. He apologized to me for not meeting my needs. He realized once he got into a new relationship how many of my needs he didn't meet. So it's true. That's what happened. And that's why I left him. My emotional needs were completely neglected. And I chose him, and I was okay with that. Because he was nice in all the other ways, just like my parents. He loved me. I knew he would never leave me, and my emotional needs were neglected. So some of what, I'm just sharing this with you. And then one of my patterns that I did, because children want to love, from the time I was 6 years old, I have had a habit of longing for men who didn't even know I existed. That's the trauma bond. Let's come back to the trauma bond. I know people who do this. Now, I don't know what percentage of people form these type of attachments, because I know some people I talk to can relate, and some people look at me quizzically like, why would you like a guy who isn't giving you attention, who's ignoring you? Like, if a guy ignores me, I just ignore him. I just go my own way. But those people will be in relationships with men who control them, or make them wrong, or cheat on them, or whatever other thing. So we all have our own patterns. You have your pattern of negative relationships that leave you unhappy, and I have mine, and I'm sharing mine with you. So I would long for them, because it was the only way I could feel love. The only way I could feel love was to long for these men, these boys. When I was little, it was boys. You know, when I was 6, it was a 7-year-old boy. When I was 9, it was a 9-year-old boy. You know, when I was 13, it was a 15-year-old boy or a 20-year-old man. And I would long for them and cry over them for months, hours, over some guy that had never even given me his number or talked to me, or someone I had talked to once. I remember when I was 15, I met this 21-year-old at a course I was on at a university, and I just remember for months or a year looking at his picture and longing for him and crying over him, like this longing for this guy that lived in another state who wanted really nothing to do with me. I was way too young for him. And even in my book, The Fuck List, people could read that and like, why did you cry over all these guys? It wasn't every man I met. It was certain ones. And it wasn't even because I had sex with them. I didn't have to have sex with them to form this trauma bond. And it has happened with women. It has happened with like 3 women over my lifetime. This longing. And the reason it's a trauma bond is because a healthy person doesn't long for someone who treats them badly or ignores them, right? A healthy person is relational with people who are relational with them, and will just ignore someone or not want to be with someone who ignores them or treats them badly, yells at them, makes them wrong, is just unpleasant to them, dismisses them, doesn't care how they feel, what they want. The trauma bond feeling is... Now, people in a trauma bond don't know they're in a trauma bond. So all they know, and all I knew, was thinking about this person makes me feel something in my heart. It doesn't feel good, but at least I'm feeling something in my heart. Or if I could just get this person to be with me, not even in a relationship. It was more for me like I just wanted them in my presence, or I just want them to hug me or hold me or have sex with me again. I would just be like, their physical affection is what I wanted, to be honest with you. I didn't even want to date them or be in a relationship. All I knew is I wanted their physical proximity, and I needed it. So it would feel like this what happened with this gentleman 2 months ago, it happened to me again. That's when I finally, like, the pieces clicked into place for me. I felt like my whole body was shaking on the inside. I had enough wherewithal to know it was my stuff, and I didn't know how to calm myself even. My whole body was all shaky on the inside, like just trembling. And now I've been for 5 years, I've been like this happy person. I'm an escort. I see guys all the time. Life is good. And I meet this guy, and all of a sudden, my whole insides are shaky. He didn't even do anything bad to me. He didn't text me back for a few days. I didn't know when I would see him. I felt so abandoned. It was my trauma bond. And what I had to learn to do was realize what it was. It wasn't about him. It activated an attachment wound and soothe my inner child. Learn how to soothe myself and bring the power back to me. Because it wasn't about him, but it was still so hard because he activated it. It's like a really deep freaking wound. Now it's easy to avoid it altogether. It's like, I will never date. Like you hear these people saying, I will never be in another relationship again. People just hurt me. That is not the answer, because I will tell you this. After calming my inner child and seeing what it was and being honest, I was longing for rejection. I was longing for being avoidant. I think it was just my little child wanting to be held by daddy, kind of inner child, deep stuff. And I learned how to calm myself and calm my body down and be like, come from my functional adult self, which is that high quality men know they must work for the attention of a woman, and not being the little girl who makes it easy for daddy, because little girl is not allowed to have any needs. She's supposed to make it easy for men. That's what I saw modeled in my home growing up. The woman must make it easy for the man. The woman must be the one to fix everything, to make it easy for the man. So when they ignored me, I would make bids for connection that were kind of like, don't you want me? I want you. I had to wake up to all that, find a new pattern of relating. And now as a result, I feel so much more joy, aliveness, and empowerment. And I'm no longer afraid of myself. I'm no longer afraid of connection. Like, it's freeing. That's why we do this work. It's freeing. I was really embarrassed to tell people about this, but it is just an example of how we go through life asleep and programmed. As little children, we have these experiences. We think that's normal, so we don't know what we're missing. I never had an experience of a man caring how I felt. And if a man cared how I felt, I thought he was weird. I thought he was needy. I had to push him away. I became a little bit avoidant. I didn't trust it because it was a new experience. So I had to learn the patterns. I had to learn, and am still learning, new ways of relating that I never saw as a child, right? So I'm learning that. And that's the power of, you know, that we have as adults. We can't blame our parents. They were asleep. So now it's just like, okay, what were my wounds? How did I adapt to those wounds? Okay, I was neglected, emotionally neglected. So I adapted by, I'm not going to long for my parents because I can't rely on them. So I will long for other unavailable people because I want to feel love. And I'm not going to trust connection too much because I don't think people are that reliable. I don't think they'll meet my needs. So I'm just going to avoid connection altogether. I will be in relationships, but I will be distant. I will keep you at arm's length. I won't let you get too close. And somehow my life isn't going the way I want. My relationships aren't going the way I want. I have no idea why. And that's why I'm making a video like this, so that you can be like, huh, I can kind of relate to some of that. Yeah, so we have the love dependence, the love avoidance, and all the flavors in between. And then we have the trauma bond. So being an adult is about waking up to our adaptive patterns and seeing how they are keeping us from being like fully alive and fully connected to ourselves, first of all. And then also learning a new set of skills that a lot of us never learned as kids. Like, were your parents and like, I don't really care that your parents were married 20 or 30 years. That is not something to brag about, because most people that are married that long are very unhappy and not very empowered in their relationships. I care about, did you see when you were little, the first 7 years of life, people interacting in a healthy, functional way, caring about each other and caring about you? And if you didn't, one of the things I've been kind of doing, and that I haven't seen any therapists or coaches talk about, is imagining being little and imagining my parents doing something caring for me. Like, sitting down with me face to face and saying, "How was your day, Sharzad?" Or, "What would you like to do today?" Or, "Is there a boy you like and how do you feel about him?" Or just something like that, and allowing myself to feel that so I can kind of normalize it. Like, how did you want to feel? Or what did you want to see? How did you want to see your parents interact together? And this might require some imagination because we don't know what we don't know. Like, I grew up seeing women always submissive to my dad, who just did whatever. He was kind of controlling and bossy. And that's how I thought women had to be. So you're going to have to maybe take a different step and just imagine something else, or be around people who relate in a way that you like and imagine you had that as also a way of healing, so that you can start to internalize what feels normal and what feels healthy. So for me also, sex did feel like love because my parents were physically affectionate with me. So they would show their love by giving us hugs and affection, or just saying affectionate things, And so for me, when men were passionate with me in bed and held me tight, that felt like love to me. And it is loving, actually. It is a way that people show love to each other, through hugs. That's how I greet my friends. That's how I help my kids. That's how we do kids. Kids need so much love and hugs and affection. However, that is not necessarily the only way of having affection. And a lot of men can just hug you because they want to smash. I gotta smash that pussy. So to them, it is not necessarily a love language. But for me, that was a way that I experienced, these men like me. This feels like love. And so when they were affectionate with me, that felt loving to me. And then I would get trauma bonded. That's why I stopped hooking up. Now, not every man, I would say, so in this year, I did hook up with 3 men, as I'm again experimenting with hooking up. And I only got trauma bonded with 1. And last year in October, there was a guy I went out to dinner with that I did a 5-second kiss. We didn't even have sex. And I got trauma bonded to him. So it's not even about the sex. I don't know why I get trauma bonded with some men. I think that there's a certain type of man who reminds me maybe of a man I looked up to when I was little. Maybe an uncle, maybe my father. Because there are always these tall, lean guys that activate my attachment system. So again, the whole key to it is like, this isn't about them. This is from the past. And I'm going to soothe myself, comfort myself, and hold myself and calm myself and realize I am the source of abundance. I am the source. And let me see who's showing up for me. Let me see who's showing up for me. Let me just sit back and engage with people who show up for me. So that's where I am now with this. Hey, if any of you can relate to this, you want to have some coaching, I'm still taking some pro bono free coaching clients. If you have attachment traumas, trauma bonds, you want to talk to me, please fill out the form on my website, thetreasurewithincoaching.com. And I do my free coaching weekdays between 3 and 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Wednesdays are my preferred day for doing this. Reach out. I would love to work with you and help you as I keep progressing in my own journey on how to be a better coach, and seeing if any of these techniques that work for me work for you, so you can be part of my experiment as I keep growing in my coaching business. By the way, I am taking the online courses from Terry Real. He's a relational life therapist. So I'm investing thousands of dollars in that as I move from doing individual coaching to also doing couples coaching or couples counseling. I'm not a certified therapist or anything. I'm a woman that is learning through her own experience, through my own growth, and sharing it with other people so that we can stop suffering and wake up to our own vitality and possibilities. I know this was a super long video. Thank you for indulging it. I hope you got a lot out of it. And please share in the comments anything that you've done in your own work to heal yourself. I would love to learn from you so that we can all learn from each other. And thank you for watching my video.